love and accept and approve of me. And I'm not sure that I would have had the opportunity to come to such full resolution with how much I love myself if I didn't look at all of the things that I thought were unlovable.
Welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast, where together we build your empire and transform your subconscious stories about what's possible for your business, body, and life. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and I'm a master mindset coach, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, known to my clients as a game changer. Each week, you get the conscious leadership strategies you need to help you reign with courage, clarity, and confidence so that you too can make the income and impact you deserve. Imagine this podcast as your royal invitation to step into your full potential and reign in your divine purpose. Your sovereignty starts here, and your reign is now.
So Megan, what initiations are you currently experiencing as you are evolving from having a seven-figure business?
Oh my goodness, I already feel giddy. What a fabulous question. I have never been asked such a thing. And initiation is such an important piece in the entrepreneurial journey that I feel like most people don't talk about. And so my initiations have been constant. I mean, anybody is really going through an initiation if you're in expansion or transformation. But currently, I would say what initiations I'm moving through is the ability to hold both the praise of people who approve of my message and who are excited and lit up and turned on by it, while simultaneously experiencing the rejection of people who disapprove and are not lit up. They're actually very triggered and annoyed by the message or by my work in the world. And so learning to be with both of those, and that neither one is where I get either my fulfillment or my despair, right? That I am unmoved by praise or rejection. I would say that is a big initiation for me right now, followed by new levels of opulence and wealth. There's this funny thing that I thought early on as an entrepreneur, which is, well, when I start making this big money, that will make life so much easier. It will be so easy. And actually, receivership is a skill set. Being able to receive money and believe that it is okay. I really did not believe I had a program within that would go, why you? Why do you deserve this? Or what makes it okay? And so the more I've gone through and building my businesses, that has definitely been an initiation lately. Why me? Is this allowed when there's other people who are not experiencing this?
Mm-hmm. And so what is the work that you've put in to either counter that voice or to accept and nurture and love on that voice that is showing up, that's saying, you know, who are you to experience this level of opulence and luxury?
Yeah, this is the inner leadership, right? This is what happens beyond a strategy. This is what happens beyond finally finding what your purpose is actually inner leadership. So how can I be with these ideas, these stories? And one of those ways is removing myself from identifying myself as the one who believes that, who believes I can't be opulent, who believes I can't hold wealth, who believes that I'm actually doing something wrong. The more I rise, right? So I create spaciousness between those thoughts and ideas and the identity that holds those thoughts and ideas and my highest wise mind, which is I am witnessing that is what's happening. I'm not it, right? I'm witnessing that it happens. So some of my favorite tools have been self-inquiry, Byron Katie's work. Without a doubt, like these things have been so much more helpful in business than strategy ever was. Self-inquiry and shadow work.
Ooh, let's talk shadow work. So because I love Byron Katie's work with, looking at the table of beliefs and how do you knock down that table of what is the belief. But the shadow, like you've faced many shadows throughout your evolution. What is the most recurring or prevalent shadow that you've had to recognize?
Mm. Well, I just want to clarify that actually Byron Katie's inquiry work is shadow work, but it is a easy, soft entry into shadow work, as opposed to looking at the aspect that we exile, right? That we're going like, ugh, right? And so they are one and the same. However, I would say the aspect that has been and is psychic and intuitive, that is something that I didn't see as legitimate. I didn't see it as powerful. I saw it as woo-woo, snake oil, quackery. And so for a long time, I didn't bring that into my work. That was a big shadow. And then another shadow was around the extensive human experiences in the sex industry that I had. Having been sex trafficked, there was a lot of internalization of like, how could I have done such a thing? How could I have been so weak to, succumb to that kind of treatment, right? Like this was so many years ago. Now it's a little more mainstream and it can be like kind of empowering and cool for some of those people. When I was there, it was underground. And so that shadow of it kind of followed me around and going, I don't want to be too visible, because if I am really visible and I become intimate with the world and connected, intimate in an emotional kind of way, if you do enough digging, you can find this shadow. And so those were the two that I have got to play with time and time again.
Mm. I mean, that was a story that before you really came to our agency, when we first started working together, like that you didn't share. And I remember when you first shared that with me, I was blown away. And I was like, that is a point of differentiator. And I saw that as an asset for the story. But what did it take for you to start summoning forth that story? Because it was healed, like definitely you did the healing work. But now in the process of sharing that story, what did that do for you?
Yeah, because historically I'd only shared it privately within my containers, right? Like private clients or within my mastermind, not quite so publicly. My idea was, how is this really going to benefit anyone in knowing it? And will it repulse people, right? Will it be like, oh, don't like her, right? So you really supported me in going, oh, this is how it's differentiating. And here's how you can actually give it in a way that it feels generous, that it feels inspirational, that it has golden nuggets in it, as opposed to just like, hey, poor me, sort of thing, right? I wasn't sure quite how to weave it in a conversation. And that's where I feel really supported.
Yeah, you did. I mean, you just now, that was such an epic demonstration of, here's my shadow and let me share this piece of my shadow that's coming up as I am expanding. I mean, that was such an expertly done weaving that like you've just had the practice. And I so honor that because I see that in you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, after so many podcasts, I'm like, oh, there's an entry point for that story.
I think of it as like some of the most visible people currently in our time. I think of Kim Kardashian also has a level of shadow of the past. And yet that level of visibility and exposure that she has now, there were lessons learned because of that experience. So what did you discover through that experience that have supported you in building the empire that you're creating?
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, I think one of them is that I'm lovable, regardless of what my experience has been. I'm lovable by me, right? Like I love and accept and approve of me. And I'm not sure that I would have had the opportunity to come to such full resolution with how much I love myself if I didn't look at all of the things that I thought were unlovable, right? So it was like this sort of paradox of where I found unlovable things about myself is where I learned to truly love myself. And the more I approve and accept and love of me, the more courageous I am, right? So my courage and my ambition really go hand in hand. They're such a good partner. They're such a good partnership, right? The other things that I've learned is that everyone at the core is innocent. Even the guy who sex trafficked me, at his core, he is innocent. At the core, he was born as pure as the rest of us, right? And that any sort of hatred or disgust that I held for him, literally, it made me sick, right? After he was long gone out of my life, I still was taking the poison by having such pain around that. And then finally, the last thing that taught me so much of is everyone will have their own interpretation of me or misinterpretation, right? How they see me or my previous experiences is through their own filter. How I see myself is even through its own filter. Probably very rarely do I see the trueness of me. And so I don't expect others anymore to do that either.
There was one story that you shared. I think it was on Women Making Waves on the Mishaps, Magic, and Mayhem podcast, where you shared about how in the healing process of with your abuser, with the man who sex trafficked you, that you imagined holding him as a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, still gives me chills.
Like,
Because that was actually part of the shadow work. I was willing to see his humanity, right? Someone who sexually, physically, mentally, emotionally abused and exploited me. I could have held on to, how dare you? What's wrong with you? What kind of person does that? But I was willing to see his humanity beyond that, right? I actually didn't want to be right anymore in how horrible he was. I wanted to be free. And so, and this happened after I had babies, right? And I remember, oh my gosh, it could totally just bring up emotion, because looking at my little boy, so it was my son that I gave a birth to first, right? And having those thoughts so early after, it was just a few years coming back, and having those thoughts of, gosh, that guy who did all those things to me started here, right? Suckling at the breast, just perfect and innocent. And their little innocent chug, that was him. At one point, that was him. And I was willing to see his humanity instead of only his monster. And was also willing to see where in those moments of sex trafficking, I too had been monstrous, that I too had done things I would not do today, right? And in those, that is what reconciled, right? It brought those opposing forces, he is horrible, I am a victim, into he is innocent, and so am I. And it was an experience, and thank you. And I would have to say that came from being a mom of a little boy.
yeah, it's such an honor. And I think we're blessed with the kids that we need to remind us of who we need to remember who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And like when my son was born, there was so much of a recognition of the deep-seated, like what Dr. Gay Henrik said, of the like core upper limiting belief. And mine was of being fundamentally flawed, and this deep fear that I had a year's worth of shadow work to recognize and reconcile with that pregnancy, of thinking, oh, I did everything right. And then still there was just a label that was attached to him by a doctor that something was going to be off. And I had to reconcile that and healing that, and the beauty that comes with bearing children and having children, and the growth that comes of our own healing that comes with kids is majestic. And I think it's just so divine.
The initiation, right?
Initiation.
Yeah, this idea that we can do it right and get some sort of outcome, versus we're always doing it right because it's what we're doing, right? And receiving what is given. So I hear initiation in that as well.
Yeah, I think that one of my favorite things that you said is instead of choosing to be right, and I'm just paraphrasing, but you surrendered the need to be right about the man who sex trafficked you, and instead you chose freedom. And how often are people death gripping to their own belief systems in order to be right, where really they just need to surrender being right to have that freedom and be wrong about something, someone, who they are even.
Yeah. And I remember a fork in the road being activism or what I'm doing now and going, I should really fight for those women there. I should do whatever it takes to put these guys in jail. I should do whatever it takes for the law enforcement to see what is wrong here, which actually would have kept me in the vibration of what is wrong and how right I am. Right now, there is a place for all of it. Thank goodness for those who do the good fight of activism. And I see how I've made actually a bigger ripple in going out and being a fully healed, at least from that experience. I'm always in a healing journey, but healed and awakened and sharing from a space of he is pure innocence like the rest of us. And so actually, what if we start treating all our boys that way? Right? What if we actually start treating them in that way from the time they're at the breast? And that actually, we don't have to put people in jail in a couple of decades, right? So my activism became, my sharing. It became my message.
I think that you touched on such a beautiful point of always healing. And I think that, especially for those who are into personal development, especially I think parenting and entrepreneurship is personal development on steroids. So the experience of healing, but where do you draw the line between the constancy of the healing of looking at the past and the future of where is the vision? Like, where do you typically place your thoughts and your on the day-to-day basis? Is it more toward consistent healing or is it more toward future focused?
It's evolved. Yeah, my idea of this has evolved over the seasons, over the years. Initially, I really required some excavation, and being allowed to sort of be the victim and going off the deep end, and then focusing a couple years really on healing. And eventually, I was just like, I kind of want to have a different experience than this. So while it's always an evolution, I would say as opposed to healing now, I'm doing more awakening. I don't spend hardly any time in anger or resentment or they did this, whether it be from parenting or the experience in Vegas, like none of that do I spend any sort of amount of time on. But I did excavate it for a good long time, right? It's like cleaned it all out. And at this point, if those thoughts come up, I know that it's habit, right? It's like residual habit. Like, oh yeah, that was once a very default setting to think. I recognize it, I see it, and now I'm so much more in the imprinting of what is to come, right? Imprinting the present moment, imprinting near future, and a lot less about what has been or what was done to me. And that's the reason why I am this way today, even the positive aspects, right? I really practice in being in the moment and less about healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've noticed that there's kind of a delineation point or a bifurcation when eventually the healing becomes you're so aware that you can always be healing that it sticks you in a place where you keep on looking at the past versus actually the new choice, like what you said, of choose realizing there's a new experience to be had. And that's really the end, the jumping off point of the healing journey, I think, of like, what is that new experience that I'm choosing to lean into? And you are now leaning into scaling a beautiful business, a couple businesses with twins and 5 children, like including 5 children and twins. So how do you navigate with the dance that comes with motherhood and entrepreneurship?
One of the top things is I don't make my children my excuse. I do not burden them by carrying the reason why I can't do this or the reason why I should be home with them. Yeah, I think I'm a very involved mom, right? I am here before they go to school, after they're home. The girls stayed home until they were about 2 years old, and then they went to the twin girls. Then they went to Montessori. I was an independent mom for many years with my two older children. So motherhood has just been part of my entrepreneurial journey. And early on, I really decided that they do not get to do not get to bear the burden of being my excuse, of why I can't be ambitious, of why I can't be wealthy, of why I can't have a fabulous career that I think about as much as I think about them, right? And that just was one of the deepest commitments. And the other commitment was, what if I was my daughters, right? Our sons, they usually kind of just have a free pass. Hey, go do, be, and have whatever you want. And girls are like, well, you need to fit it in between motherhood and marriage and, these sorts of things. And so I look at my little girls and I imagine when they have babies, would I want them to stop living their life? Would I want them to stop dreaming? Would I want them to stop prioritizing themselves? Would I want them to stop having drive if they naturally have it? And the answer is a million times no. I want them to still be who they are and have children, right? I want their identity to be a mother and beyond, what that. Unless, of course, they simply want motherhood. Beautiful. I actually, my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's 9 now, she let me know the other day that what she wants to be when she grows up is to be a wife that stays at home and has babies. And I thought, of course that would be my daughter, right? And fabulous. I am so excited. I'm so excited to support her in whatever it is. And I also am so excited to support myself in whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that that's when you honor your own, you have the integrity with who you naturally are. Because I've always known that I was going to be a mom, always. And I have always known that I'm going to have a business and have a career and be doing the dance of all of it, because that's just a part of who I am. And I think that the culture of sacrifice that we're taught as women, that it's an either or mentality, it strips you of your power, when really you can have it all if you just don't choose to do it all.
Yeah, I love that. You can have it all. You don't have to do it all. And this idea that somehow as mothers who are working or leading a business or are CEOs, don't value motherhood or children as much. It's just kind of old news now. It's just kind of tired, right? I mean, it's what my kiddos know. And so they don't want and need for anything, right? They have lots of loving parents in their lives. And I love that they get to see what is possible without the idea that it needs to be my way, without the idea that they should grow up and earn their own money. They should be a CEO. They should work or they should stay home. Instead, it is, look what is available. And even as I pursue my dreams, I am deeply devoted and love being your mom.
Mm. And like, your kids were a huge initiation point with being a single mom of two beautiful babies and having the track record that you had. Entrepreneurship really was the only choice for you. What were the toughest initiations as you've gone through and evolved from the beginning stage of starting your business with two babies at home to evolving to 6 figures and then multi-six and now 7 figures? What were each of those initiations that you faced at each of those stages of evolution, and especially as your children grew too?
Yeah, the first one was deciding that I was going to be an independent mom, that I was not going to be married anymore, that I would be single and I would have my 2 kids. And that was a hard decision because I had no college education and I was unemployable because I had a track record. That's not quite what I meant. I did have a record though. And so I wasn't employable at any sort of job that allowed for good income.
hmm
And so when I was leaving that marriage, that was a huge initiation. How, my first husband was a professor at a college. He was very well to do. He supported us with a nice lifestyle. And I thought, oh gosh, am I about to damn my children to single motherhood, living off of the state, uh, struggling, right? That was my idea. And it is almost what held me in place. Um, Thankfully, I had a great support system that was like, you can do this, Megan. And that's when I really started becoming an entrepreneur. So actually the leaving was the hardest, or choosing to move forward as a mom. Then there was, of course, the time where I was working like 10 to 12 hours a day. I had a breastfeeding baby and a toddler. And I was launching my second business, which was to really free me up from the first one. That was definitely a challenge, right? Like, whoa, that was a lot of hours. And then the third most, I can't say most, but I feel like it was such a big turning point, was after my first two businesses, especially the second one where I had worked myself into burnout and lost everything because I had a mental and emotional breakdown, had to go stay someplace to recuperate for 30 days. Ended up losing my car, my home, all of our belongings. We lived at home with my mom, on her floor. I shared a room. It was supposed to be for 30 days and it ended up being 9 months. That was probably one of the biggest disillusions and identity deaths that I've had up until this point. Was like, how could I have been earning $250,000 a year in my own business and be here? Oh shit. That was a big one. And that was actually where I restructured. That was where I was like, I cannot hide who I am. I am intuitive. I am psychic. This is what I'm here to do. And at this point, it can't get much worse. We don't have our own home. So what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to start aligning myself with my highest timeline. I'm going to use my gifts. And within about 4 months, I was making 6 figures. And then shortly after that, multiple 6 figures and so on and so forth. So that was a really powerful one, to have lost it all and go, oh, I can rebuild. But this time, let me do it in 3 hours a day because I have kids and there's no way I'm doing what I just did for the last few years. And so that is why now I support my clients and myself in only working 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And so with that intuitive gift, that like you've always been intuitive and you've always been psychic, and um that, and you've shared stories on other shows where you were doing readings for some of your, was it your mom's clients?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the second generation entrepreneur, and like having that background, did that give you more proclivity to take risks?
Think so. I'm actually third generation. My grandmother was also an entrepreneur. And
I love that.
yeah. And so think that I was just exposed to it, right? It wasn't this outlandish thing in my family. It just was. It was as, now they really paved the path for me because they did not have very much example in their life as they grew up, but I did. And so once I hit the ground, I just ran with it. But that did really support in seeing that it could be done. I definitely resisted it for a while, especially when I was newly married and had a newborn. I was like, I'm never doing that. I'm just gonna stay here. I'm not gonna do that. It sounds like a lot of work. So yeah, I would say that I leaned toward it a little bit easier than the average. So between being able to see that it was doable and not being employable, those two things just kind of came together.
And so the psychic and intuitive piece, does everybody have a psychic gift that they just aren't yet in tune with?
Totally. And I tend to like refer to it as something different than a gift, because a gift is like a little special something that gets that other people don't. And intuition or being psychic is a muscle, right? It is being tuned to the frequencies and the quantum grid that is surrounding all of us, that is all of us inside and outside. So of course we all have that. It's natural. It is our innate nature to be psychic, to be in tune with the world around us. For me, again, with the support of my family, it was a muscle I worked from early on. And so now it's like, it's just how I move through life. But that doesn't mean that other people don't have it.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're learning how to tap into your intuition, what is the first step that you kind of need to bridge beyond awareness
Mm-hmm.
or beyond the acceptance that we all have access to it?
Yeah. The accessing it is typically very, very easy for people. I know that their humanness likes to get stuck in, I don't think I can hear it or see it or feel it or know it. And actually what happens is the moment it's received, it's dismissed and we go into the logic and we're accessing our human again. So the way in which you can strengthen your intuition is follow it. Follow it. The moment it hits you, take action. Don't think about it. Don't process it. Don't take it to your husband for his direction, right? Like go, oh, this is what I just got. Even if it looks illogical or irresponsible or doesn't make sense, I follow it. I go to it no matter what. And that actually strengthens that muscle so much more than using cards or a pendulum or muscle testing, right? Those things can work the muscle, but what's going to keep it coming through stronger, louder, more dependable is by following it instead of receiving it and then like, oh yeah, that was my intuition, but I'm actually going to go do this thing because it's more logical.
Yeah. Yeah. The conscious mind really loves to just inject logic into our circumstances. And with that intuition, like, how do you discern between the difference between an intuitive nudge to not do something and your own humanness of your own fears and programming?
Mm-hmm. Well, then an intuitive nudge to not do something is also typically instantaneous. It's actually before the thoughts can creep in. It's before the nervous system can have a reaction. It's so immediate, whether it's a yes or a no, or this is good for me, this is not good for me. It's immediate, right? It's again before anything else can take place. Some no's indications for me is like a heaviness, a cloudiness, like a stormy boulder type of vibe. Those are clear indicators. As you're working your intuitive muscle, you also want to be getting familiar with your humanness, your mind, all the chatter, right? The humanness is the ego. So who am I beyond Megan? Who am I beyond this identity? Differentiating between those two things and your nervous system. Because oftentimes people will read their nervous system as their intuition. And most people have a dysregulated nervous system from their early childhood conditioning, right? That just makes sense. That's just normal. And so if they have a visceral reaction, they go, oh, this brings about fear in me. This must be my intuition and I shouldn't go forward, or I should, whatever the should is based on their nervous system. And actually their nervous system isn't fully functional. So it isn't all that dependable. Right. So those are a few things that we want to be looking at when we are going solely on intuition.
That is one of the best explanations of the nerve and the reasons as to why getting and maintaining and doing what you need to do to regulate your nervous system I've ever heard, of just being able to understand that the dysregulation of your own nervous system is what is not blocking, but miscommunicating a message.
Right. It's just miscommunication. And there's so much beautiful teaching out there that is trauma informed and that sort of thing. And when they say, hey, your body knows, actually your body knows the past. Right? It knows the past. I was sitting in one of my ayahuasca journeys and could see where all my somatic system was still holding trauma. And I'm like, after all these years, years, and I still got stuff in there, right? And my nervous system would react to even excitement as fear, right? And if I was to only follow the body before I released some of that trauma, before I got her up to speed with the future vision, before my body was actually able to withstand activation of the nervous system, I would be frozen years ago, and I wouldn't have made that, right? I was able to override that and follow the intuition, but eventually you get to look at it.
And then the looking at it, it's like when you're able to regulate that nervous system, like that was why I'm so grateful that even before personal development, my first business was teaching Pilates when I was 19. And that is one of the few forms of exercise that actually can regulate your nervous system because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. And so you're practicing the regulation, and we'll regulate, like, just so that we're clear, like regulation is not parasympathetic only or sympathetic only. Like, you want to have the versatility, just like your heart rate goes up and down. Like, you want to have the versatility of being able to have it spike with excitement, joy, moving forward. You have to kick a goal, and then have it down regulate into the parasympathetic, so you can rest and digest the experience that you just had. So that ability to have that flexibility, that's what's key. And when we get stuck with trauma, like, that's when it kind of freezes or locks in a specific position, whether it's up or down. And then for me, it was understanding where where my regulation kind of likes to park it with being dysregulated, and then understanding how to then downgrade or downshift. Because for me, it's anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, me too. I was gonna say, yeah, park it is usually up here, like I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
My work day is over. Why am I so like this? Right. And actually having the tools to come back into a calm state that actually I really enjoyed being in the activated state. Right. It really fueled my day, my inspiration, my vision. And then it's like, okay, well, now I'm in the backyard with the kids and I'm ready to be like, here, and having tools to regulate is such an important piece to business, to success, to money, to be able to come back into a resting space.
Did you find that, I mean, especially since you hit burnout, had an extreme case of burnout, that you tend to like, because of past conditioning or childhood or trauma, that you kind of like to live in that more activated space, or that's where your humanness and your ego that's where it kind of likes to live? Like, for me, that's 100%. Like, I had to learn space and grace. That was, and taking time off, and like this concept, it's crazy. It's called vacation.
Yeah. And then, run a business and then take vacation.
Yeah.
Again, because my default setting would be overdrive, overproduction, overwhelm, right? And so it's why I created my program of 500K in 3 hours a day, is because you don't actually have to miss out on income, and you can do what you love those 3 hours a day and then come back into the space and grace. Right? It doesn't have to be full blown of anything. It can be a little bit of everything, which is where I find most freedom, is I didn't have to choose, right? There was a time where I was like, I'm never doing that again. I'm not going to run a business. I'm not going to do this. And a lot of people come to me after that. I'm afraid that I will get back to that space. And now I'm not afraid because I have the tools to regulate.
What is your favorite tool that you use?
Again, like, this is an evolution. Some weeks it's this thing, other weeks it's that thing. But my go-to is Kundalini yoga, breath work, both the activating and the parasympathetic, right? Still in silent meditation versus guided meditation, right? Because that's still a doing, by the way. And that's how my humanness would love to come in. Like, let's do a meditation, right? Definitely still and quiet meditation. And then throughout the year, I sit with plant medicine a few times, and that will activate, but it also allows me to integrate over time. So those would be for sure the big ones. And inquiry, self-inquiry is actually very regulating to see all of the aspects of whatever situation might be activating me.
How long have you been practicing sitting with plant medicine?
About 3 years.
Yeah. So even before you had your twins?
No, no. How old are they? So they're almost 3. So about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to go that course of exploration?
What did inspire me? It wasn't my mom, because she went the first time and was like, hell no. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to do that. But something just kept urging me and kept calling me. And I don't know, can't quite remember, other than I was fascinated by it. I would wake up at night thinking about it. I had like a pull in the solar plexus. One sitting, the initial sitting was so profound, created so much reconciliation in my life, even after years of doing therapy, coaching, shadow work. It was just another level of excavation that I didn't even know was possible, even as someone who's intuitive and psychic and multidimensional and can go into different timelines and realities. This just allowed me to see what else there was. And so after that initial sitting, I knew that there was more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because I know we've had a lot of listeners who are interested in plant medicine. I have someone coming on in November who specializes in facilitating plant medicine. And that being said, I want to acknowledge the fact that you've done years of shadow work, of self-inquiry, of the exploration, versus a trend that I see in the industry of self-healing and personal development, where that's the default of like almost like looking for a plant medicine pill versus actually getting to doing the challenging work of sourcing it through yourself first and like clearing out some of the clutter before you go in with a hardcore like cleaning crew.
Yeah, because the plant medicine sitting for me has been a very wide spectrum. It's been in some times terrifying, in other times enlightening. And either way, there is months and months of integration. It definitely opened up my nervous system. So it took regulation to a whole new level. It awakened the nervous system that I thought was regulated and perfectly fine, but actually it was dormant. And so it isn't. I used to say, I think everyone ought to do this. I actually don't say that anymore. And I think that it's really important to be called, to find facilitators that are absolutely genius at their craft and be prepared to integrate. Because what it is not is a fast track, right? Like, yes, it's like years of therapy in a one sitting, but can you imagine what there is to integrate after years of therapy in 3 hours? Right. And so my deep dedication to my soul and personal evolution prepared me for that. And had I done it years before, I would have probably been very freaked out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's a trend. It's something I have not explored yet, but something that I've had interest in as well, which thus my audience has mirrored. But my choice is I want to be done having babies first before
Really?
going through. Yes. Yeah.
And I so wonder if what my experience would have been before babies, but it was after all my babies were born. Although I had massive downloads from my twins that were little when I first sat, right? So that was just like next level. I understand wanting to wait too. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I think birth itself having been such a spiritual initiation every time, that's been the deepest level that I've of initiation and integration I think that I've yet experienced, was just giving birth naturally and the trust that is born and etched in your bones when you do that.
Yeah. And so much of those hallucinogenics are, released during
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Yeah. There were some definite like breakthroughs and just natural, awarenesses that came through just through that experience itself. So I could only imagine what doing that after would be like. So something to explore, to put a pin in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So what, with the intuition, with your psychic ability, I know when you know that you're off, how do you get back on course when you feel that heaviness? Is it just as simple as just a little decision of saying no? Or do you find that for you, they tend to be the intuition has not been listened to, or with your clients, it's not been listened to for a long time. So there's several steps and decisions that need to be made to course correct.
Yeah, this is such an individual basis because if you're following your intuition, you're in the flow of, hey, my intuition guides, which is divine will, right? Divine will, life guides me. I am not in control here. There's no way my humanness could ever create or decide or lead to the level that divine consciousness pouring through me can, right? Like, look at this whole universe that exists and I didn't even control it, right? I wasn't telling anything how to do this. So that if you're in that role and you notice, oh, ooh, I went into my humanness of wanting to control things or micromanage or have it my way or else, then it is a redo. Just go back and redo. It can be a conversation. It can be an offer. It can be an entire relationship. You go back and redo it. Hey, in that conversation we had, I agreed to XYZ. And I'm noticing that I agreed to that because I really wanted your approval. And I'm also noticing that what would feel better is for me to stay aligned with what is important to me. And so, although I agreed, I'm here to let you know that that does not work for me after all. Redo the conversation, redo the whatever it is, go back and redo it and rewrite, right? This is how we shift timelines. Like, you don't want to be in that timeline, shift it. Go back in time and with the person or the experience and redo it, not just in your mind. If you can do it physically, do it physically, and then follow what you know to be true. Now, if we're talking years and years and years, right? People who have been married or avoiding their purpose or their mission, we're doing little micro adjustments until they're in their ideal timeline, able to hear their intuition. And usually this comes with a lot of peeling the humanness layers back of these stories of like, I feel guilty or I am wrong, those sorts of things. And that might take a little more time. But not always, because some people just wake up and they go, hey, I'm ready for this shift. I'm ready for that. In that case, we release those identities. And when you are not so covered in identities, stories, humanness, you can actually see, hear, and feel the intuition so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the power of just the stripping away of the illusions of who we think we are, who we think we should be for other people, and what that looks like. Now, as a mother, what identities have you recognized that you've been like, no, I have to strip that belief system back? Because I think some of those for me, it was realizing that my love was also attachment to my children. And that I learning how to detach, the art of detachment from your children. It's like, that's such a societal, no, you're not supposed to detach, they're children, but also knowing that that's not attachment is not actually love. And so how to love fully without attachment. So that was one for me. What was one for you?
Well, one similar to yours is that they're not mine. They aren't my object. They are not mine to do with as I please, that I'm actually here to guide them and keep them in a nice, safe-ish container, and that they are their own people. They are not mine. They are not an extension of me. They are individual. They are their own essence, their own spirit, not here to live out my path and purpose, not here to make me feel loved or wanted. The other one is that they need me all the time. just isn't true. My goodness, the programming and conditioning I got growing up is that moms are the most important, that moms should be the one to do everything, that only moms can do it that way. And I see that as such a huge disservice to children having a full spectrum parenting experience. So letting go that I do it better because I'm the mother has been wildly freeing, not only for me, but for my children and them forming a strong relationship with their father. So they have two primary parents. I mean, that is mind blowing for a child. Can you imagine having two? I had a primary parent, right? It was my mom.
Yeah.
And so my kids have two primary parents in this house, but they also have the older kids have their father and their other mother who are primary. And so they have a village. I am not in there being the only one to meet their needs. And then the last one is that my drive and ambition to build an empire somehow takes away from them having a loving present mom, that I have to choose. And instead, I can actually have both. And that frees them to have that option later in life as well.
I think that that is such a powerful message to just beat the drum for the next generation, to create personally responsible human beings that are not codependent, but see and recognize the interdependence of all of us together. Versus, I think the model that you were shown, that I was also shown, of that very is in a way codependent parenting, versus it being an interdependent relationship and recognizing your children as the independent souls that they are. I mean, my God, my toddler certainly wants to assert himself as the independent one.
Yeah.
But that, right? What is it with the COVID babies? Because damn,
They're like, I say humanness, opinion.
they are just, it is something else. It is amazing to watch the level of assertiveness and boundary holding that I'm like, oh, I guess that's something I need to learn.
Yeah.
At an even stronger level, because damn, toddlers they don't mess around.
No, I know they're like dictators, man. Oof.
Yeah. Yeah. And when they know what they want, they just, it's done. Like, they're on the counter. Like,
they're not waiting for permission.
yeah. Yeah. I think that it's when we open our, like Osho said, when we open ourselves to learning from our children, we can learn so much rather than just thinking of us as we are the teachers. I think kids can be just our best educators, especially our own, because it's this remembrance of these pieces of ourselves, of reflecting back as like our own little mirrors. But I love the ambition is not separate from your children. And in fact, by you going for what it is that you want and for your dreams, you're just demonstrating greater possibility for them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Megan, I have loved our conversation so much, and I would love to shift into a little bit of rapid fire if you're ready. Yeah.
Yeah. I love this.
Who is your favorite female character in a book or a movie, and why?
Oh, Daughters of Joy by Deepak Chopra. She was like this back pocket secret to who awakened the main character in that book. But she wasn't like out there, yet she was changing people's consciousness.
Amazing. What person would you want to trade places with, alive or alive and in their time, to be in their body, see how they thought, experience the world as them just for a day?
Jesus. Oh my gosh, the love codes, the unconditional love codes that he held, that he represents. I would trade definitely have his life for a day.
Yes. Yeah. What is your morning routine set you up for success?
My morning routine is actually pretty extensive. I get ready first thing, but then I do some of what we talked about earlier. I do some Kundalini, I do some breath work, I do some movement, I do some journaling. I set my intention for the day, who I'm choosing to be. Is there anything else in there that I do? But it's definitely all about me during that time. I'm just connecting with myself, connecting with my true self, letting go of anything that feels like it's in my sphere, feeling muddy.
What is your money routine?
My money routine, this shifts and changes as well. I buy what I want when I want because I want it. I don't set goals anymore because divine will. If it is mine, it is mine. And if it is not, it is not. And I choose to pay my team better than what I was ever paid being on someone else's team. I would say that those are probably my more unique approaches to money. I care a lot less about saving than probably the average person who has any sort of wealth. I care a lot more about the experience and having a beautiful life. And I also have some investments that will build over here.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. What is your nightly routine to set you up for a successful morning?
This one is a little more challenging for me to stay consistent with the toddlers learning to go to sleep without a pacifier right now. But
Mama.
probably about 7 o'clock or 7:30 at night. Again, I do Kundalini, light breath work, tea, and I connect with my husband. We co-regulate, we talk about the day, we just, connect in bed. But I actually retire to my room very early, about 7 o'clock.
Awesome. Awesome. What do you define to be your queendom?
Creating my own financial sovereignty, doing what I love.
And lastly, how do you crown yourself?
I say yes to me. I say yes to me a lot. If it's on my heart, if I want to do it, it's a yes.
Megan, how do we find you? How do we work with you? And how do we learn how to make 500K in less than 3 hours a day?
You can find me at megancamille.com. You can find me on Instagram at the Megan Camille, or on Facebook, Megan Camille as well. 500K in 3 hours a day. There is a primer for that. I also do a live training about once a quarter, and all of that information is also on my website and Instagram.
Megan, it has been such a pleasure having this deep dive conversation on initiations and transformation, and just being blessed to have been working with you the past year. Like, it has been truly my honor to know you and support you in your visibility, and just be able to see how you are expanding at a rapid rate. And I am just honored to be a sliver at being a part of that.
Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure. And I know we've been at it together, and I love getting to travel this journey with you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. As always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If what you heard resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and start creating a bigger impact now by sharing this with a friend. Just by doing that one simple act of kindness, you are creating a royal ripple to support more people in their sovereignty. And if you're not already following on social media, connect with me everywhere at crownyourself.now for more inspiration. I am so excited to connect with you in the next episode. And in the meantime, go out there and create a body, business, and life that rules. Because today, you crown yourself.